The colony ship Horizon's Promise had been drifting through the void of space for 17 years when the Krixar found them. Captain Elena Vasquez was in her quarters reviewing the weekly supply reports when the alarm cut through the quiet hum of the ship's systems. She dropped the tablet and ran toward the bridge, her boots pounding against the metal floor as other crew members rushed past her in different directions. "Report," she barked as she stepped onto the bridge. Lieutenant James Park looked up from his console with fear in his eyes. "3 ships, Captain. They came out of nowhere. They're surrounding us." Elena moved to the main view screen and felt her blood turn cold. The alien vessels were unlike anything in the Galactic Federation database. They were sleek and black, shaped like predatory fish with sharp fins and glowing red markings that pulsed like heartbeats. Each ship was at least twice the size of the asterisk Horizon's Promise asterisk, and they moved with a grace that spoke of advanced technology far beyond human capability. "Any communication?" Elena asked. "Nothing yet," Park replied, "but our sensors are picking up something. They're scanning us." The ship shuddered as an invisible force locked onto their hull. Elena grabbed the edge of her seat to steady herself. On the view screen, one of the alien ships moved closer, and a beam of pale light shot out from its underside, bathing the asterisk Horizon's Promise in an eerie glow. A harsh voice crackled through the communication system. The translator struggled to process the sounds, producing fragmented words at first before finally forming coherent sentences. "Human vessel, you are now property of the Krixar Predator clan. Your resistance will be entertaining but pointless. Prepare for harvesting." Elena felt her crew's eyes on her. These were not soldiers. They were colonists, scientists, engineers, farmers, and families hopping to start a new life on a distant world. The Horizon's Promise carried nearly 2,000 people, including 300 children. They had no weapons beyond basic mining lasers and a handful of security personnel with standard sidearms. "What do you want?" Elena transmitted back. The response was a sound that might have been laughter. "Want? We are Krixar, we hunt, you are prey. This is the natural order of things." The connection cut off, and the pale light intensified. Elena watched in horror as the alien ship extended what looked like a massive claw, reaching toward their hull. "They're going to breach us," Park whispered. Elena's mind raced. She had read about the Krixar in Federation files before leaving Earth. They were a species of apex predators from a harsh jungle world, evolved to hunt in packs with ruthless efficiency. They had conquered dozens of species across 3 star systems, enslaving some and exterminating others. The Federation had no diplomatic relations with them because the Krixar did not believe in diplomacy. To them, the universe was divided into 2 categories, predators and prey. "All hands," Elena said into the ship-wide communication. "This is your captain. We have been intercepted by hostile aliens. I need all non-essential personnel to move to the inner compartments immediately. Security teams, report to me on the bridge." Within minutes, Chief Security Officer Marcus Webb arrived with his team of 12 officers. They looked capable enough, but Elena knew that a dozen humans with sidearms would be no match for whatever the Krixar sent onto their ship. "Captain," Marcus said, "I've reviewed the Federation files on the Krixar. They typically send boarding parties of 40 to 60 warriors. Each warrior is about 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating, and armed with plasma weapons that can cut through standard ship walls." "So we're dead," someone muttered from the back. "No," Elena said firmly. "We're not dead, we're human." She looked at each person on the bridge, seeing the fear in their faces but also something else. Something that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. Determination. "The Krixar think we're prey," Elena continued. "That's their mistake. They don't know what humans are capable of when we're cornered." A loud clang echoed through the ship as the alien claw made contact with the hull. The sound of metal scraping against metal filled the air, and the deck tilted slightly as the Krixar began cutting through their outer shell. We have maybe 15 minutes before they breach, Park reported. Elena turned to Marcus. I need options. Marcus pulled up a schematic of the ship on the main display. If we can't outfight them, we need to outsmart them. The Horizon's promise was designed for colonization, not combat, but it has some features we might be able to use. He pointed to different sections of the ship. Industrial sectors with heavy machinery, hydroponics bays with chemical fertilizers, engineering with plasma conduits. If we can lure them into specific areas, we might be able to create traps. Elena nodded slowly. An idea was forming in her mind. The Krixar are predators. They're used to chasing scared prey that runs in straight lines. They're not used to prey that thinks, that plans, that fights back with strategy instead of strength. She turned to her crew. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to give the Krixar exactly what they expect. We're going to run. We're going to scream. We're going to look like terrified prey. Some of the crew exchanged confused glances. And while they're chasing what they think is weak, helpless prey, Elena continued with a dangerous smile. We're going to show them what humans really are. We're going to ambush the predators. The next few minutes were organized chaos. Elena directed different teams to different parts of the ship, giving each group specific instructions. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the head of the science division, was sent to the hydroponics bay with orders to prepare specific chemical compounds. Chief Engineer Omar Hassan was told to rig certain corridors with traps using the ship's plasma systems. Marcus and his security team were positioned at key chokepoints, with instructions not to engage directly, but to harass and redirect the enemy. The colonists who had signed up for a peaceful life on a new world were now being asked to become guerrilla fighters. Parents kissed their children goodbye before sending them to the most protected areas of the ship. Elderly scientists volunteered to serve as bait, saying they had lived full lives and wanted to protect the young ones. Through it all, Elena felt a fierce pride in her people. They were scared, yes. They were outmatched, absolutely. But they were not giving up. They were human, and humans did not go quietly into the night. The ship shuddered again as the Krixar completed their breach. The sound of rushing air filled the corridor as the alien vessel connected to theirs, creating a pathway for the boarding party. Here they come, Park said quietly. Elena watched on the security monitors as the first Krixar warriors stepped onto their ship. They were even more terrifying than the files had described. Massive creatures with gray-green scaled skin, 4 arms ending in clawed hands, and faces that were all teeth and predatory eyes. They moved with a fluid grace that spoke of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. The lead warrior raised his head and sniffed the air. His mouth split into a horrifying grin. I smell them, he growled to his companions. The prey is frightened. Good. Frightened meat is tender meat. Elena watched them spread out through the corridor, their weapons raised, their movements confident. They had done this hundreds of times before. They were the ultimate hunters, and they expected this to be just another easy kill. They had no idea what was waiting for them. All teams, Elena said quietly into her communication device. Operation Ambush is a go. Let's show these predators what prey can do. In the darkness of the ship's corridors, 2,000 humans prepared to fight for their lives. The hunt was about to begin, but for the first time in Krixar history, the prey was going to hunt back. The first phase of Elena's plan began with screaming. It was calculated, deliberate screaming broadcast through the ship's internal speakers to create the illusion of panic and chaos. The colonists had recorded their own voices expressing terror, and now those recordings echoed through the metal corridors, bouncing off walls and creating confusion about where the sounds were actually coming from. The Krixar boarding party split into smaller groups, each hunting team following the sounds of what they thought was fleeing prey. War leader Kreth, who commanded the 53 warriors that had boarded the human vessel, felt his hunting instincts surge with pleasure. The prey was behaving exactly as expected. Running, screaming, hiding. This would be a good hunt. Teams of 5, Kreth ordered through his communication link. Sweep each section. Kill the adults, capture the young for the breeding pens. Leave no corner unchecked. His warriors obeyed instantly, spreading through the ship like a disease. Kreth himself led a team toward what his sensors indicated was a large gathering of life signs, the main population center, the place where most of the meat was hiding. What Kreth did not know was that those life signs were actually heated water tanks that had been moved from the hydroponics bay. Dr. Tanaka's team had repositioned them to create the illusion of a large group of humans, drawing the hunting parties towards specific locations where traps waited. The first trap was triggered in Corridor 7 Delta. A team of 5 Krixar warriors was pursuing what they thought was a fleeing human. The figure ran around a corner, and the warriors followed eagerly, their predatory instincts overriding caution. They rounded the corner and found themselves in a dead-end storage area. The figure they had been chasing turned around. It was not a terrified colonist. It was Marcus Webb, wearing a stolen Krixar helmet that one of the science team had managed to replicate from Federation files. The helmet had confused their tracking systems just long enough. "Surprise," Marcus said, and dropped to the floor. Above him, a maintenance hatch opened, and 5 colonists dumped 300 gallons of industrial solvent onto the warriors below. The chemical was not designed as a weapon, but Chief Engineer Hassan had discovered that it reacted violently with the oils that Krixar secreted from their scales for protection. The warriors screamed as their natural armor began to dissolve. In their confusion and pain, they stumbled into each other, and Marcus's security team emerged from hidden positions to finish them with precise shots to the exposed areas that the solvent had created. 5 Krixar warriors died in less than 30 seconds. It was the first time any of them had experienced being prey. Similar scenes played out across the ship. In the hydroponics bay, Dr. Tanaka had rigged the fertilizer storage tanks to release concentrated ammonia gas when triggered. A hunting team of Krixar burst into the bay expecting to find cowering farmers. Instead, they found an empty room with strange canisters on the floor. The gas was released before they could retreat. Krixar respiratory systems, evolved for the thick jungle air of their homeworld, could not handle the concentrated chemicals. 3 warriors collapsed immediately, choking on the poisonous fumes. The remaining 2 tried to flee but found the doors sealed behind them. They died clawing at the metal, trying to escape a trap they had never expected from mere prey. In engineering, Chief Hassan had prepared his own surprise. The plasma conduits that powered the ship could be overloaded to create localized bursts of superheated energy. He had mapped out exactly where each conduit ran and had stationed colonists at control panels throughout the section. When a team of 8 Krixar entered engineering, they were herded through a maze of machinery by carefully placed sounds and fleeting glimpses of humans. Each time they thought they had cornered their prey, the target would slip away through a maintenance shaft or hidden door that the aliens could not fit through. Frustrated, the hunting team leader ordered his warriors to spread out and search every corner. The moment they separated, Hassan gave the signal. Plasma bursts erupted from the conduits, catching individual warriors in deadly crossfire. The Krixar armor that could stop standard weapons was no protection against plasma hot enough to melt steel. 4 warriors died instantly. The remaining 4 tried to regroup, but they found themselves surrounded by colonists armed with nothing but tools and raw determination. An elderly mechanic named Victor drove a welding torch into the eye of a warrior who had threatened to eat his grandchildren. A young engineer named Priya used a hydraulic press to crush the arm of another. The Krixar were strong, fast, and deadly, but they were also confused, disoriented, and for the first time in their lives afraid. On the bridge, Alina monitored the battle through what remained of the ship's internal sensors. The ambush was working better than she had hoped. Teams were reporting success across the ship. They had killed or disabled at least 20 Krixar warriors, nearly half of the boarding party, while losing only 3 colonists. But she knew the real challenge was still ahead. War leader Kreth had not yet been engaged, and the Krixar commander was heading toward the central core where the children were hidden. "Marcus," she said into her communication device, "Kreth is approaching Section 12. We need to redirect him." "On it, Captain." Marcus and his remaining security officers positioned themselves in Kreth's path. Their job was not to fight the war leader directly. Even with their ambush tactics, taking on a Krixar commander in direct combat would be suicide. Their job was to make him angry, to make him chase them, to lead him exactly where Alina needed him to go. The confrontation happened in a wide corridor near the ship's main atrium. Kreth and his personal guard of 10 warriors saw Marcus standing alone in the middle of the passage, arms crossed, showing no fear. "You," Kreth growled, "you are the leader of the resistance." "No," Marcus replied calmly, "I'm just the bait." He turned and ran, and Kreth's hunting instincts took over completely. The war leader charged after his prey, his warriors following, all of them focused on the single human who dared to taunt them. They chased Marcus through corridors that grew narrower with each turn. The Krixar's large bodies began to bump against walls and each other. Their communication with the rest of the boarding party became garbled by the metal walls around them. They were so focused on their prey that they did not notice they were being herded. Marcus ducked through a final doorway and disappeared. Kreth burst through after him, eager for the kill, and found himself in the ship's main cargo bay. It was a vast open space filled with containers and equipment, dimly lit and full of shadows. And it was full of humans. Not hiding humans, not screaming humans. Humans who stood in organized lines, armed with makeshift weapons, facing the Krixar with determined expressions on their faces. Kreth stopped in confusion. Behind him, the doors sealed shut, trapping his personal guard inside with him. "Welcome to the kill box," Alina's voice echoed through the cargo bay speakers. "You wanted to hunt humans, war leader. Now you get to learn what happens when humans hunt back." The lights went out, plunging the cargo bay into complete darkness. The Krixar had excellent night vision, evolved for hunting in the shadowy jungles of their homeworld, but the humans had prepared for this. Every colonist in the cargo bay was wearing night vision goggles salvaged from the ship's survey equipment. The playing field had been leveled. Kreth heard his warriors die around him in the darkness. One by one, they fell to attacks from enemies they could not see. The humans moved in coordinated teams, striking from multiple directions simultaneously, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. For the first time in his life, war leader Kreth felt fear. He was not the hunter anymore. He was the prey. "This is impossible," he snarled into the darkness. "You are humans, you are weak, you are prey." "That's where you're wrong," Alina's voice replied. "We are human, and humans are whatever we need to be to survive." The battle in the cargo bay lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, Kreth and all 10 of his personal guard lay dead on the floor, brought down not by superior weapons or strength, but by superior strategy and cooperation. Outside the ship, the remaining Krixar vessels detected that communication with their boarding party had been lost. Standard protocol would be to destroy the human ship and cut their losses, but the clan commanders were confused. This had never happened before. They needed to understand what had gone wrong. They sent a second boarding party of 30 warriors. This group was more cautious, better prepared. They moved slowly through the ship, checking corners and watching for traps, but it did not matter. The humans had already learned from the first engagement. They adapted their tactics, created new traps, found new ways to exploit Krixar weaknesses. The second boarding party took longer to defeat, nearly 2 hours of running battles through the ship's corridors. The humans lost 23 more colonists, brave men and women who gave their lives to protect their community. But in the end, all 30 Krixar warriors were dead. On the bridge of the lead Krixar ship, Clan Master Vorith stared at the readings with disbelief. Nearly 100 of his finest warriors had boarded that human vessel. None of them were responding. All life signs had ceased. "Impossible," he whispered. His second-in-command approached nervously. "Clan Master, what are your orders?" Vorith considered his options. He could destroy the human ship easily enough. His weapons could reduce it to atoms in seconds. But that would not explain what had happened. That would not restore the honor of the warriors who had fallen. And it would not silence the growing fear in his heart. "We leave," Vorith said finally. His officers stared at him in shock. "Leave? But Clan Master, we cannot leave survivors who have killed our warriors. The honor of the clan demands." "The honor of the clan demands that we survive," Vorith interrupted. "Something is wrong here. These humans are not normal prey. We must report to the High Council and determine how to proceed." The 3 Krixar ships disengaged from the asterisk Horizon's Promise and retreated to a safe distance. For a long moment, they simply hung in space, watching the damaged human vessel that had somehow defeated them. Then, without another word, they turned and jumped to faster-than-light speed, disappearing into the void. On the bridge of the asterisk Horizon's Promise asterisk, the crew watched the Krixar leave. For several seconds, no one spoke. No one quite believed what they were seeing. Then Lieutenant Park began to laugh. It was a slightly hysterical laugh, born of relief and exhaustion, but it was contagious. Soon the entire bridge crew was laughing, crying, and hugging each other. Captain Alina Vasquez slumped into her chair and allowed herself to breathe for the first time in hours. They had done it. They had survived. 2,000 colonists had faced a species that had conquered dozens of worlds, and they had won. The cost had been high. 57 colonists had died in the fighting, and many more were wounded. The ship had suffered significant damage and would need weeks of repairs before they could continue their journey. But they were alive, they were free, and they had proven something important not just to the Krixar but to themselves and to the entire galaxy. Humans were not prey. They had never been prey, and any species that made the mistake of treating them as such would learn that lesson the hard way. Alina looked at the stars through the viewscreen and smiled. Somewhere out there, a colony world was waiting for them. They would get there eventually, but first, they had a story to tell. A story about the day that humanity showed the universe what they were really made of. The aftermath of the battle left the asterisk Horizon's Promise wounded but alive. For 3 days, the colonists worked without sleep to repair the critical systems that had been damaged during the fighting. Captain Alina Vasquez coordinated the repair efforts from the bridge, her voice growing hoarse from constant communication, but her spirit never wavering. The bodies of the fallen colonists were prepared for a memorial service in the ship's main assembly hall. 57 names were read aloud, each followed by a moment of silence as the community honored those who had given their lives. Some had been security officers who fell defending choke points. Others had been scientists, engineers, and ordinary civilians who had volunteered for dangerous duties knowing they might not survive. Victor, the elderly mechanic who had killed a Krixar warrior with a welding torch, stood before the crowd and spoke about his grandson, who had died leading a diversionary team in engineering. Peter was 22 years old, Victor said, his voice steady despite the tears on his weathered face. He had his whole life ahead of him, a new world to explore, a family to start, dreams that will never come true now. He paused and looked out at the assembled colonists. But his sacrifice, and the sacrifice of everyone we lost, means that the rest of us get to keep our dreams. Our children will grow up. Our colony will be built. And somewhere out there, the Krixar will remember the day they learned that humans are not prey. The crowd rose and applauded, not just for victors' words, but for everyone who had fought and died. When the ceremony ended, people did not scatter to their individual tasks. Instead, they stayed together, sharing stories, holding each other, and finding strength in their community. Alina watched from the back of the hall, feeling a complex mixture of pride and sorrow. Leadership during a crisis was one thing. Leading people through grief and recovery was something else entirely. She had trained for emergency situations, but nothing had prepared her for the weight of all those names, all those faces, all those lives that had been cut short under her command. Dr. Tanaka approached her quietly. "Captain, you should know that the medical bay is reporting something unusual." "What is it?" "Birth rates. We've had 3 pregnancies confirmed in the last 2 days, all conceived before the attack. But more significantly, 17 couples have registered their intention to start families in the next month." Alina raised an eyebrow, in the middle of a crisis. Tanaka smiled softly. "It makes sense when you think about it. We faced extinction. We survived. Now people want to affirm life, to prove that we're still here, still growing, still moving forward." It was a small comfort, but Alina held on to it. The colony ship was more than just a vessel. It was the seed of a new human community, and that seed was still growing. Over the following weeks, the Horizon's promise slowly healed. Chief Engineer Hassan and his team performed what he called emergency surgery on the ship's damaged systems. The hull breaches were sealed. The plasma conduits were repaired. The navigation systems were recalibrated. But the most significant change was not physical, it was psychological. Before the Krixar attack, the colonists had been a collection of individuals and families who happened to share the same destination. They came from different countries, different cultures, different backgrounds. They had signed up for the colony mission for various personal reasons: adventure, opportunity, escape from problems on Earth, scientific curiosity. After the attack, they were a community, a tribe, a family forged in fire and blood. Marcus Webb noted the change in his security reports. "People are volunteering for defense training at 3 times the rate they did before. We've had to expand our militia program to accommodate demand. Even the children are asking to learn basic tactics." Alina was not surprised. The universe had revealed itself to be more dangerous than the recruitment brochures had suggested. The colonists were determined never to be caught helpless again. She approved the expansion of the defense program but insisted on balance. "We're colonists, not soldiers," she reminded Marcus. "Our goal is to build a peaceful community. The ability to fight is important, but it's not our primary identity." The weapons training was supplemented with courses in diplomacy, first contact protocols, and conflict resolution. Alina wanted her people prepared for whatever they might encounter, but she did not want them to become paranoid warriors who saw threats everywhere. 1 month after the attack, the Asterisk Horizon's promise was finally ready to resume its journey. The damaged colony ship limped toward a nearby system where Federation records indicated a habitable moon that might serve as a temporary refuge. Alina was reviewing the approach trajectory when Lieutenant Park's console began beeping urgently. "Captain, we're picking up a distress signal." Alina felt her stomach tighten. "Source?" "It's coming from a small vessel approximately 4 light minutes ahead. The signal is automated, repeating in Federation standard." She considered ignoring it. They were in Krixar territory, after all, and any ship in distress might be bait for another ambush. But the Federation had strict protocols about rendering aid to vessels in distress, and Alina had not survived the Krixar attack by abandoning her principles. "Approach with caution," she ordered. "All defense teams on alert." As they drew closer, the nature of the distress became clear. The vessel was not a ship at all but an escape pod, clearly of Krixar design but broadcasting in Federation standard. Someone had jury-rigged the communication system to send a human-compatible signal. Life signs, Elena asked. 3, Park reported. 2 adult, 1 juvenile they appear to be. He trailed off, staring at his readings in confusion. They appear to be what? Human, Captain. The life signs are human. Elena's blood ran cold. The Krixar took prisoners. Everyone knew that. They enslaved some species and bred others for food. The idea that humans had already been captured, that there were already human slaves in Krixar space, was horrifying. Bring them aboard, she said. Full quarantine protocols, security teams standing by, but we're not leaving them out there. The rescue operation was delicate but successful. The escape pod was brought into the cargo bay that had served as the kill box during the battle. Now scrubbed clean of blood and Krixar remains, it served as an improvised quarantine area. The 3 survivors emerged slowly, blinking in the bright lights of the cargo bay. 2 adults, a man and a woman, and a young girl who could not have been more than 8 years old. They were thin and pale, with haunted eyes that spoke of experiences no human should have to endure. The woman fell to her knees when she saw the crowd of colonists gathered around the quarantine barrier. Humans, she whispered, real humans. Elena stepped forward. You're safe now. Can you tell us who you are and how you ended up in a Krixar escape pod? The man answered, his voice rough from disuse. My name is David Chen. This is my wife Sarah and our daughter Emma. We were on a research station in the outer systems. The Krixar attacked 3 years ago. We've been their prisoners since then. 3 years. Elena could not imagine the horrors they must have experienced in Krixar captivity for 3 years. How did you escape? She asked gently. David's expression darkened. We didn't escape, we were released. That made no sense. The Krixar released you. After what happened here, David said. After you defeated their boarding parties. Word spread through the Krixar fleet. The humans who fought back. The humans who killed 80 warriors with farming equipment and industrial chemicals. He looked at Elena with something like wonder in his eyes. You terrified them, Captain. For the first time in their history, the Krixar are afraid. And when predators are afraid, they make mistakes. Sarah continued the story. There was chaos in the prison compound after the news arrived. The guards were arguing, fighting among themselves. Some wanted to kill all the human prisoners immediately before we could become dangerous. Others wanted to use us as bargaining chips. Emma, the little girl, spoke for the first time. Her voice was small but steady. The nice guard helped us. He said humans were too much trouble now. He put us in the pod and sent us away. Elena processed this information carefully. The idea that a single ambush on a colony ship could cause political disruption in the Krixar Empire seemed unlikely. But then again, predator cultures were often fragile. Their entire social structure was built on the assumption that they were the hunters, never the hunted. When that assumption was challenged, the psychological damage could be profound. How many other human prisoners are there? She asked. David shook his head. We don't know exactly. Our compound had about 40 humans from various captured ships and stations, but we heard rumors of other compounds, other prisons scattered across Krixar space. Could be hundreds, could be thousands. Elena felt the weight of that number settle on her shoulders. Hundreds or thousands of humans suffering in Krixar captivity, waiting for rescue that might never come. The Federation had declared Krixar space off-limits decades ago, after the first diplomatic missions ended in massacre. No rescue operations were permitted. The humans in those compounds had been written off as losses. But that was before a colony ship, full of farmers and scientists, had proven that the Krixar could be beaten. That was before the predators became afraid. Elena made a decision that she knew would change everything. Dr. Tanaka, she said, please take the Chen family to medical for full examinations and treatment. Make sure they have everything they need. She turned to Lieutenant Park. Send a message to Federation Command. Full report of our engagement with the Krixar, including our tactics and casualties. Tell them we have rescued human prisoners who can provide intelligence on Krixar operations. And then, Captain. Alina looked at the stars through the cargo bay viewports. Out there, somewhere in the darkness, humans were suffering, waiting, hopping. And then, she said, we continue to our destination. We build our colony. We grow strong. And when we're ready, we go back for our people. It was a promise she did not know if she could keep. But it was a promise worth making, because humans did not abandon each other. That was the lesson the Krixar had failed to understand. Predators hunted alone. Prey species herded together for protection. But humans were something different. They formed bonds stronger than survival instinct, loyalties that transcended personal safety. They would fight for each other, die for each other, and cross the stars for each other. The Krixar had made a terrible mistake when they attacked the Asterisk Horizons Promise Asterisk. Not because they had lost warriors, although that was significant. Not because they had created fear in their empire, although that was important. Their mistake was drawing the attention of a species that never forgot its own. And humanity was just getting started. The journey to their destination took another 4 months. During that time, the Chen family slowly recovered from their ordeal and shared everything they knew about Krixar society, military tactics, and the locations of prison compounds. The intelligence was compiled, analyzed, and transmitted to Federation Command in encrypted bursts. Alina did not know what the Federation would do with the information. The political situation back home was complicated, with some factions arguing for peaceful isolation and others pushing for more aggressive policies toward hostile species. But she knew that the story of the Asterisk Horizons Promise would reach Earth eventually, and when it did, everything would change. For now, she focused on her immediate responsibility, getting 2,000 colonists safely to their new home. The planet they finally approached was beautiful, a blue-green world orbiting a stable yellow star, with vast oceans and abundant land masses covered in vegetation. It was not Earth, but it was close enough to bring tears to many eyes. "We made it," Park said softly as the planet filled the view screen. Alina nodded. "We made it, now the real work begins." The Horizons Promise established orbit and began sending survey teams to the surface. The planet, which the colonists voted to name New Providence, was rich in resources and remarkably hospitable to human life. Within weeks, the first permanent structures were being constructed on a coastal plain near the equator. But even as they built their new home, the colonists remembered their promise. They trained for the day when they might return to Krixar space. They developed new tactics and weapons based on their experience with the boarding party. They raised their children with stories of courage and sacrifice. And they waited. News from the wider galaxy trickled in through long-range communication relays. The story of the Asterisk Horizons Promise had indeed reached Earth and spread throughout Federation space. Humans everywhere were inspired by the tale of the colony ship that had defeated the fearsome Krixar against impossible odds. The Federation Council, pressed by public opinion, began reconsidering its policies toward the Predator clan. Military analysts studied the ambush tactics that Alina's colonists had developed. Rescue missions were proposed, debated, and eventually approved. 5 years after the battle, the first Federation warship arrived in orbit around New Providence. It was not a colony vessel like the Asterisk Horizons Promise, but a fully armed cruiser, bristling with weapons and filled with trained Marines. Captain Alina Vasquez, now Governor Vasquez of the New Providence colony, met the ship's commander in her office overlooking the growing city. "We've come to take you up on that promise," the commander said. "The Federation has authorized Operation Homecoming. We're going to free every human prisoner in Krixar space." Alina felt tears prick at her eyes. How many ships? 40, with more coming. The Krixar have been weakened by internal conflicts since their failure here. Their empire is fragmenting. This is our chance." Alina thought of the Chen family, who had made a home on New Providence and were now expecting a second child. She thought of Victor, who had died peacefully in his sleep last year, surrounded by the community he had helped to save. She thought of all the faces, alive and dead, who had fought in those desperate hours on the Horizons Promise asterisk. "I want to be there," she said. The commander smiled. "We were hoping you would say that. The Marines have been training with your tactics for months. They call their assault methods the Vasquez Doctrine. It would mean a lot to them to have you along." And so, 5 years after she had sworn to return for the human prisoners, Alina Vasquez boarded a warship bound for Krixar space. She was not a young woman anymore, and her fighting days were behind her. But she could advise, plan, and bear witness to the liberation of her people. Operation Homecoming lasted 8 months. It was bloody, costly, and imperfect. Some prison compounds could not be reached in time. Some prisoners did not survive the liberation. But when it was over, more than 3,000 human beings who had been enslaved by the Krixar were free. The Predator clan, decimated by war and internal strife, sued for peace. The treaty negotiations were long and difficult, but in the end, the Krixar agreed to release all remaining prisoners and stay out of Federation space permanently. Their empire did not collapse, but it was never the same. The myth of Krixar invincibility had been shattered, and with it, much of their cultural confidence. Alina returned to New Providence a hero, but she never forgot that the true heroes were the 57 colonists who had died in those desperate hours on the Horizons Promise asterisk. A monument was built in the capital city, with each name inscribed in stone and a flame that burned eternally to honor their memory. She gave the dedication speech on the monument's first anniversary, standing before a crowd of thousands who had gathered to remember. "We were prey," she said. "That's what the Krixar called us, that's what they believed, and maybe by their definition they were right. We had no weapons, we had no training, we had nothing but our minds and our will to survive." She paused and looked at the monument, at the names of people she had known and led and lost. But they forgot something important. They forgot that prey species have been fighting predators since the beginning of time. They forgot that the hunted have just as much reason to be clever as the hunters. They forgot that sometimes the weakest-looking creature in the forest is the most dangerous one of all. She turned back to the crowd. "We are human. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest or the toughest or the most advanced. But we have something that the Krixar and every other predator species in the universe lacks. We have each other." She gestured at the crowd, at the city behind them, at the stars above. "When the Krixar attacked our ship, they expected to find victims. Instead, they found a community, farmers who became soldiers, scientists who became warriors, parents who became protectors. We did not fight alone. We fought together, and together we were stronger than any predator." The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. That is the lesson of the Horizons Promise asterisk. That is what we must teach our children and our children's children. The universe is dangerous. There will always be predators who see us as prey. But as long as we stand together, as long as we fight for each other, as long as we never forget what we are capable of when we work as one, we will survive. We will thrive, and we will show the galaxy what humans are truly made of. The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing across the colony that had been built by survivors. Alina stepped back from the podium and looked up at the sky, where the stars shone bright with promise and danger. Out there, somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other species were watching. Some were potential allies, others were potential enemies. All of them would eventually learn what the Krixar had learned in Fire and Blood. Humans were not prey. They had never been prey. and any predator foolish enough to hunt them would discover that the most dangerous creature in the universe was the one that looked harmless until it wasn't. The story of the asterisk Horizon's Promise spread across the galaxy, carried by traders and diplomats and the endless currents of interstellar communication. It became legend, then history, then something more, a promise that humanity would never forget. On the monument in New Providence, beneath the list of names and the eternal flame, a simple inscription read, "They thought we were prey, they were wrong." And far away in the fatting remnants of the Krixar Empire, predators learned to fear the dark, because somewhere in that darkness humans were watching, waiting, and they would never stop fighting for their own.